Welcome. We're back tonight, PACA 2, ready to address and to visit with the explosive events, the jumps and sprints, with our guest Randy Huntington, who is a name that should be very familiar to you as a track and field coach, but somebody who's been in the wars and the circuits for years here, coach of Mike Powell, world record holder, Willie Banks, former world record holder in the triple jump, and again has been over in China, so we've kind of lost out on him for a while, but now he's back where he had great success with some of the Chinese sprinters and long jumpers. So, Randy, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to. I mean, it has been a while, almost a year and
Yeah.
a half, I think, since I've been on a call. So I
Yeah,
went
no,
back.
like I say, we've had you long distance there. And Randy, of course, is a graduate of the University of Oregon, so he does have the green and gold blood there, but he coached at Cal Berkeley and then went foreign over to South Korea, to China, did private businesses with Kaiser. He's a great proponent of Kaiser, which you'll find out as we go through. And basically tonight I wanted to address a little bit of just where we are on the in the US as far as the jumping and lack of depth or lack of quality jumping that we had 30 years ago, and why we're not getting to those marks again. You know, why a 8 meter long jump for women, for men, is pretty much non-existent. And you know, what can we be doing to get back to the performances that we had in the 80s? You know, it's sad that we're not at that level anymore. So, Randy, again, we've been kind of talking offline a bit about the Achilles injuries and the fact that that's happening a lot. But what would you say, just in general, as to why have we slipped so far?
It's a let me start off. I want to introduce somebody because I invited them on because I keep getting this question. And
Okay.
so um and it's everybody keeps asking me where do they get Exogen from? And over here you'll see Joseph Dolcetti, and Joseph, that is Exogen right there. And he's in Canada, but he lives in Malaysia, which is why he's not around. I said, come in so I can tell everybody who you are. And that way they can get a hold of you and not keep asking me how they get Exogen. Uh, because I can't help them except to send them to Joseph, who unfortunately I communicate with on WeChat more than everything else, which is the Chinese social media. Anyways, so if you want, Joseph, you can ask Joseph and he can chat and you guys, if you want to know more. Obviously, Dennis and everybody's using and has. I mean, this is what, eighth year, ninth year of using Exogen. So, um, I think in general, and Sue, I asked you some questions earlier, one of the things I think we have a problem with is we don't really know what's happening with everybody. We've lost the science. I mean, the last true good science data that you can find, and correct me because I don't get a chance to look at it much anymore. I think it's the 2018. There might have been something in Doha. I have not seen the results. I've seen results, but I haven't seen the biomechanical numbers. But the fact is, we just don't know who we are anymore.
Right.
Not from an objective standpoint. Um, and given that in the old days, we had Dr. Hay and we had everybody, and we were able to test and we could find out exactly what was going on. I mean, Yu Bing is still around. He's still in North Carolina, between North Carolina and China, and we don't use him. Um, obviously, Ralph is gone now, but Amber is still around, and Clark, and there's others. So I think that the lack of sports science, and I don't know who's here with sports science, but I'm not gonna jump down your throat. I'm just gonna say I don't think it has given us what we need anymore as coaches. I think if I was coaching here in the States, um, I'd be asking for help. But what ends up happening is we're all becoming our own scientists. You know, we're all either putting up our own timing systems, and we have to make sure that we're doing it right. And I think the first thing is, and I was looking at some numbers, and it looks like, at least from the, I mean, we sort of had Dendi and Jarian, and there's been two guys or four guys over the past number of years that have been, and the men's side, the women's side with Tara and others are coming along really well.
Mhm.
Um, Obvious Adrian's on, and he's doing a great job in the TJ. But I don't see data. I mean, like what, you know, how do you back up what you're doing without having that data to help you? And I started creating my own data in China. Of course, you become your own scientist, as I mentioned. And the very first thing that I, of course, look at is velocity. And the velocity, it's one thing to start to understand your horizontal velocity on the runway, which is essential to have. I mean, we know that Carl and Mike Conley and Larry and a lot were pretty fast guys. I
Mhm.
mean, all those guys were 20.0 in the 200 or under, and Powell was the slowest of the group, but probably could have been a pretty darn good 200-meter runner if we'd ever turned him loose. Um, I, when I saw the data that Gideon Arrow had done for me and Dr. Hay had followed up with, when it showed that our horizontal velocities were good and Carl's velocities obviously were better than Mike's. And when you look at the 2018 data, you'll see that our horizontal velocities, again, aren't bad. When my Chinese athletes are faster or as fast as the American athletes, we got a little bit of a problem. Um, I think. Um, Wang Jianan, who won in 2023, 22, 23, geez. Um, it he was 10.8 meters per second on the runway. Xiu Hao was around 10.8 meters per second on the runway. Those are two of the faster guys on the runway. But how do you get the vertical side?
Yeah.
And this is the key, you know, and it ta and the hard part is this is not a short journey. Um, we maybe we're able to create the horizontal velocity, which is what I did with the Chinese guys. I said, look, I got to make you fast first. Then I'm going to teach you how to go vertical at the board. And, Wang Jianan probably hit 3.8 meters per second, maybe 3.6, 3.4. Carl was like 3.3. Mike was 4 point something. I can't remember right now, 4.28 or so. And you have to be a little careful uh, because these guys can block and get great horizontal velocity, I mean, vertical velocity, but they lose their horizontal velocity. So we don't have numbers. Nobody's given us numbers. I
Yeah.
mean, how do we know what they're doing? The only thing we can gauge is we can measure horizontal velocity. We can't really gauge that vertical velocity very well at all. We can measure the last step, and we do know that there's still a propensity for too long a last step. We do, and particularly with the Chinese kids had a real problem with this. And when you look at when you look at the number of jumps that they take at 6 steps and 8 steps, which are very slow jumps from a velocity standpoint, they end up trying to jump for distance from those distances. And when you do that, you're cheating yourself. You're really cheating yourself because you start doing all kinds of things wrong to jump far. So instead of how far did I jump, how do I jump far? And getting this across to the Chinese kids was really difficult because they wanted to jump far from 6 and 8 steps. I'm like, you're not going to execute properly the last 3 steps if you continue doing this. And to get good at executing the last 3 steps at velocity, I'm going to say 18 months to 2 years. to achieve that. It's not overnight. It takes time because if you're able to come down at 10.8 meters per second, it's a whole nother ball game going vertical from that.
Right.
You know, and this is what this is basically what we did with Mike. We taught Mike get faster, of course. Then Mike was a basketball player, and everybody's heard me say this before, but his vertical ability was pretty good, but not at speed. You know, I mean, from 12 steps, Mike could jump 830. It's hard
Wow.
to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his best was 833 from 12 steps. You know,
What was his
and that was
approach?
hmm?
Well, how
What
far
was the distance then?
Yes.
No, well, 12 steps. It wasn't very far. Um, maybe 30 meters,
I
somewhere in
mean,
there,
what was his
28
full
meters.
approach? You say the
Oh, his full approach was 47 point something meters,
okay.
18, 20 steps.
20 steps. Okay.
Yeah. So he had a 3-4-3 rhythm. And we can talk about that a little bit too in a second. But just in general, what I'm observing is we don't know we know velocity, horizontal velocity. We don't know vertical velocity. I'm seeing um, to this day, I'm still seeing a lack of a penultimate step everywhere in the world. It's like disappeared. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody do one, but in general, it's just the Chinese call it the American way. I'm like, no, no, it's the science way, guys. It's not the American way. You know, I think that there's a limit somewhere around 8 meters 50 if you don't do a good penultimate. You're just using your horizontal velocity and extension off the board and pushing, driving up off the board. But if you don't get that extra lowering and up, um, yeah, I think you've got a limit around 850 or so.
Hmm.
When after that you start to see everybody having a penultimate a little bit after that. And now we now that becomes another set of circumstances. So let's say you start to get a penultimate, and two things start to happen when you first are achieving it. One is you're camping on it. You get slow on it. You
Mhm.
break there. You lose horizontal velocity. And then the second one is, and this is the habit they get from doing short approach jumps, they push to the board. So there is no push to the board off the penultimate foot. It is as quick a step as you can possibly achieve in the long jump. So you want your foot off the ground and do not push to the board. Yeah, that's because you're wanting to pop that leg up into the air. So you want that little action off the penultimate now becomes your drive knee. And if you do it right, and I do have some data here from 18, but if we look at that, one of the problems that the Chinese had was that their um, velocity of their thigh was actually really slow compared to the rest of the world. And that was something we had to correct, i.e., Kaiser, boom, and other things that we would do with standing hip and the FT and different weighted devices in which we would just start to increase the strength of the hip flexors and then the eventually the speed. So someone like Wang Jianan, I think, was about 400 degrees per second. He eventually got up to 580, you know. And if you look at the women, and we played with this on a force platform, if you look at the women, let me see if I've got, I think I could use this. If you look at this being your foot and your leg as a pendulum, and if you make let's say your knees right here where it's bent like that. So for the women, if you look at the great jumpers, most of them take off and they don't take off like that where their knees are, they take off like that. Their foot's out in front. And what we did is we went, okay, let's start measuring this. I'm going to put you on a force platform and I'm just going to let you swing your leg long and then eventually just keep coming and coming and coming until you're just driving your leg straight up. And what we found is that that takeoff knee it, about there gave us the greatest amount of force.
Hmm.
It wasn't here. It was out in front a little bit. So if you think about it, it's just having a slightly longer lever. And now that lever, it's like putting a weight on the end of your foot and then letting it drag you out there. So,
Huh.
and if you look at um, uh, the Russian world record in the women's, she really has her foot out there, and so for the women particularly, that was a way to uh, make up for maybe not ever having the right amount of hip, hip flexor strength or thigh speed that they needed. So if you can't get speed, you get force.
Right.
You can do both to get power. So if you can't get the speed where you want it, then you use the force to get the power you need. So when that worked out pretty well, we had a little girl. She's only 5'4" or 5'3", about Tara's size probably, and in China, and she went 685 from 16 steps. Um, uh, and she's probably will be a 7-meter jumper by LA if the coaching can keep going. Well, what do we have a problem with? Running mechanics. I still don't see great sprinting on the runway, though. I do see it in some, but not everybody. This little girl I was talking about in China was also the Chinese champion in the 60 meters.
Hmm.
So she run that fast, but she's run around 7:23, which is
Yeah.
it's a good time. Um, Down from 7:52 or so. So, but bringing that speed onto the runway and being able to use it is uh, a real challenge. That's why I say this is not a short journey to get the penultimate correct, and then to be able to utilize it at higher velocities, which is the whole reason for going from 12 to 14 to 16 to 18 to 20 steps. So you're starting to learn how to use the penultimate properly and at that velocity. Um, the two biggest things occurring there, you might have heard me mention it before, particularly with the women, but a lot of times with the men too, is they'll come off their second to last or the step before the penultimate, and they'll recover their heel high like they do in run, they've got poor running mechanics, and they'll recover that heel high, and that's the kiss of death right there. Because what that ends up doing, in order to get your leg around, you got to lift your thigh. Once you lift your thigh, chances of you fouling now become really great. And Xi Hao and Huang Chenzhou, uh, Wang Jianan, Li Jinsei all had that problem. Again, from their short approach jumping. They're pushing to try to get there, and it ruins it. So first thing, and I try to have some video in here. I was downloading it, and I just don't know if it's downloaded because I'm got the call up in front of me here. Um, so that's I'm going to use my little thing here again. So they're recovering too high in the second to last, and then they recover. They come through and they come lift the thigh up rather than stay low, kick the ball, recover the heel low, and right to the board. Um, and that when you learn to do that, you could really fly. I mean, really fly. It's
So
effortless.
if we back a minute here, just because you're throwing a lot at us, which is awesome. Uh,
Sorry.
no,
Yeah.
no, this is what we want. This is the way we're going to get better. So what I'm hearing is with the free knee at takeoff, that rather than keep the foot under the knee, that the foot has to come out a bit, like
Yes.
your demo there, so that it's a little bit of a longer lever off the board.
And a
There,
little bit of that, Sue, depends on tibia femur ratio too.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Because if you got a shorter femur and a longer tibia, it can actually even be a greater advantage. Because it's, be having throw. So you have to know those ratios. We
Uh-huh.
do know, and you've heard me say this before, that a 1-to-1 ratio is your best jumper for sure. Now, Wang Jianan is not a 1-to-1 ratio, never was even close. So
Mhm.
he had a lot of problems. But go ahead, keep going. I'm sorry.
And so then the on the penultimate, like we had Carl on a year or so ago, and he said his biggest thing was the fact that nobody was teaching appropriately how to do a penultimate.
He's
And that,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
that was his biggest takeaway, or what my thought was his biggest takeaway. And that, like you say, from the penultimate to the takeoff, that is a low recovery with the, I guess, free knee,
Free
free
leg,
foot,
free
free
foot. Yeah.
foot, that it's a low, like a mid calf recovery
Or lower. Yeah.
or lower, even like at the ankle. Is that
Yeah.
what
We
you,
used to use the top of the sock. And when you're using
okay.
yeah.
And that's the issue, that we're not doing that. We're pulling it through, like you say, the higher knee. Um, so basically, are you saying that all these short approaches are teaching the wrong way versus doing full approaches to be able to transfer?
If you don't tell them, if you don't acknowledge it,
Uh-huh.
you know, one of the things that people hear me say is lead with the top of your foot off of that second L. So when you push off it, you don't lead with the knee, you lead with the top of the foot first.
There you go.
The knee, yeah. So it's a really important cue, which is why, and Joseph's on here, which is why I use shoe weights. I
Oh.
use little 200-gram shoe weights. So the hardest problem with all of this is people don't know where their limbs are in space and time. They
Hmm.
don't know where their foot is, where their knee is, And I use, and I'm not going to get into oxygen much here, but I use the different weights to teach people where they are. Like, okay, where's your foot? I don't know where it is. Well, obviously you don't know where it is because look where it is, And you say, okay, I don't want you driving with your knee. I want you leading with your foot through. And that keeps the foot low. The same thing happens in sprinting, in terms of finding that finding that angle for everybody in which you're looking for the hip. You're looking for where is the best, I'm talking about the 100 meters now. It's 1600. We'll change a little bit for 2 and 4. But where's the best recovery angle? Is it way up here high to shorten the lever? Well, not necessarily. To go back where we were, because you can also have it open a little bit and create more force and actually drive your body down the track even better. And Ralph went through this a lot with me, and we went through it a lot,
Hmm.
finding the reasons. This is part of that process. The other thing, and I know somebody brought it up, and that's the tiger paw, which I've used forever and ever and ever. I mean, I used it way back when I was coaching with Tony at Cal, was when I first started using it. So I think that's when that TV commercial was out, the old Michelin tiger paw or whatever it was. Good, I can't remember which tire company it was now. But you rip the track with that foot. It's an impulse. It's not a if you rock heel to toe, it may slow you down. If
Hmm.
you go flat foot and through, but don't push off it, then you're going to carry the hip horizontal velocity through that better. Now you're going to have now your next challenge, of course, is can your free leg or now your takeoff leg
Hmm.
support the force and the energy that you've just created. Um,
Explain a little more in this tiger paw for those that aren't aware of it.
Oh, the tiger paw is just, you use your spikes. You're just basically taking and you're ripping the track back in the penultimate. Just
Mhm.
rip the hell out of the track as fast as you can. And the better you get at that, I think I don't know if Dwight's on. Is Dwight on here? No. I think when Raina was working with Dwight, I think it was one of the things that we had talked about, and that he cued Dwight with, because Dwight was jumping around 845, 850. He was jumping well. And he had that 879 or so in Eugene. And that was the cue.
Hmm.
Rip the track. Rip it as hard as as fast as you can, you know, and
With
you rip it
penultimate.
with on the penultimate. You rip it. And now again, cross extensor reflex. If you rip this comes through faster. As long as now you know where it is and it comes through low fast, not high
high fast.
fast. Because if you come through high fast, now you're going to have to bring that thigh up, and now you're probably and then you're going to straighten the leg out and more than likely foul. Because once you bring that quad into play, the hamstrings don't work anymore as well as they should.
Mm,
It's stupid to say they don't work anymore,
yeah,
but they are no longer doing their job. Um, and I'm not seeing much of this in any of the male long jumpers. I watched them. I watch them every time I'm sitting there,
sure.
and I just want to say, come on, guys. The first thing you want to say is run. No, just will you please come down the runway? Why are you striding down the runway? I mean, this is a reckless abandon. This is a very aggressive, and I think that in general, everybody's probably got rhythm understood. I would hope that they've gone through the 3-3-3 rhythm or 3-4-3 or 4-3-3, um, or 4-4-3, for that matter. Uh, but and if you haven't, then that's something you need to learn to do. That rhythm denotes the takeoff leg. So it's if you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and that's how you get them to start feeling their rhythm throughout the whole approach. And as I said, that was not my invention. That was from Bob Lee at Missouri
Mm.
back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I was gonna say that goes way back.
Yeah, I think Bob was probably there when you were maybe just starting, Sue. I
Mm.
don't know when he stopped. Tony might remember him. I don't know if you remember Bob Lee at Missouri or not, or if anybody else does. But
I knew him, but I met him, but I don't know him. I
yeah,
was
he was.
I was just starting, and that was when we would go to Kansas to see my brother's family. We would
Ah, okay,
would go to Columbia occasionally, would bump into him, and it was just more of a recognition. We never really had any really intense conversation at meets, just a casual hello. And obviously at that time, I was just with the women, so I didn't have as much contact with him.
right. And I don't know if he was in the sport very much longer. I think he was out. I don't know what he did. I don't know what happened to him, but
Yeah.
I never really heard of him anymore after 76 or 77, maybe somewhere in there. Um, but that concept came from Bob, and
And this is
it
the
made
runway rhythm that you're speaking now, right?
yeah, whether it's the long jump or triple jump or pole vault or even high jump, Sue.
Mhm.
It's the same. You use the same sort of thing, even though you have a curve involved.
Mhm.
So getting them to feel rhythm and creating their own dance on the runway and their approach.
Now, you'd mentioned also, let me see here, how the last step needs to be very short, very quick. Sometimes you'll hear about, long, short, long, long, short, long, short. What kind of concept do you have in that regard as far as the length of the penultimate and the one prior?
I think Dr. Hay pretty much showed us that long short is the way to go, although Beeman obviously was short long or
Mhm.
long or same same. Although we don't have his exact data on his step lengths. Uh, but what we did note, and I'm going to go back a number of years, and I think Sue, you were around when we were talking about this right afterwards. But in where it hit me right square between the eyes was in 2002 in Stanford, watching the women's long jump there, and I think it was 1 in 642 or so by what's her name it from Arizona State. Um, Brianna maybe won. I don't
Oh,
remember.
yeah, Brown and Glenn.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe Brianna won. Arizona State. But 642 winning the national championships. Come on.
Yeah.
What's happening? And we went back and looked at everything. And I had fortunately since I was in the role of sports science right then, maybe it was that we could put a 2 meter mark down and out on the runway and film. And by gosh, if these women were all at 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, some of them outside the men on their second to last step. And there's just no way in the world you can make a legitimate jump off of that. Not only were they very far away, they were also bringing their heel to the butt. you
Mhm.
know, and so there was no sense of rhythm change, a step change coming into the last three steps. They were just running. They were taking to heart run off the board, which is, it's great cue and it works really well for getting high school kids, junior high school kids to do what they need to do. When you get to the elite level, you start thinking only run off the board and you're going to limit yourself if you're not doing a penultimate, you know.
So how
Um,
can we get I guess, like,
Thanks,
Carl
Jim.
said, we're not teaching it. So how do we teach the penultimate?
Well, it's funny because now I'm going to go backwards and you can teach the penultimate from six steps
Okay.
because you got to teach it slow first
Yeah.
and ankle weights, foot weights, exogen calf weights, something that lets them know where their darn lower leg is. Um, and one of the drills, and you've all been on this long enough to have heard me tell this story with Dr. Hay. When I asked him one time, I was just curious because I was coaching Sharon Couch at the time, and I just said, and Sharon could not leave the ground to save her life. She couldn't. I'd asked her to go touch the rim or the net in the basketball court. She couldn't get within a foot of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is a almost 22-foot long jumper.
Yeah.
But that was because she was a hurdler. And she never learned how to. She wouldn't break at the cut step. She was ripping the cut step, which unfortunately was not her penultimate foot. Um, so it Dr. Hay, he was just so damn humble. He says, Randy, I don't know, but I will find out. And so 3 days later, I get an email from him and goes, it's galloping. And that's why we started doing the galloping drills to see who could gallop back in Austin in
Mhm.
19, whenever that was,
Right.
93 or 94 or something. And, we found the high jumpers could all gallop.
Hmm.
Sheila Hudson could gallop and nobody else could gallop. Zero. And
That's
like, if you
quite
can't
a
gallop, you can't take off.
yeah.
And so that has to become galloping has to become part of every long and high jump for sure. Pole vault, triple are a little bit different in their takeoff, but at least those two events really need to learn how to gallop.
Now you say this
And
step back, so take us through that.
so if let's say you're doing six steps and you're going to go through it. Um, the very first thing I do is I take the pole vault pit or long jump pit, whichever's safer and whichever's softer. Um, and I make them step onto their penultimate and kick the pit. So they learn how to go ba ba and kick. So they have to bring their foot low. Can't bring your foot high up behind you and kick the pit. Doesn't work. So they learn how to bring their foot low. So they rip their foot and then they kick the bottom of the pit. Make sure there's no metal bars or it's not raised on anything, please.
Yeah.
And they're usually soft enough, so test it first. Um, but they do that over and over and over again until they can start to feel it. And that's how you start teaching the last step, the movement from second to last to penultimate to last. So 2L to 1L to L. Um, and once they get that feeling, now you can use that. It's hard with a triple jump, but you can sort of use it. But with a triple jump, you got to get them a lot closer. So high jump is farther away, long jump is a little closer, triple jump is almost on top because on the board, if you're looking at the high jump, you might be like this,
Hmm.
and the long jump, you might be like this, and the triple jump, you're pretty much here. So you look at those three different body angles, and that's how you set it up to try to get them to feel that that cross extensor reflex action pull. If you pull with the right, the left is going to get pulled through really fast. And they start to learn not to control it, to let it go. And then it becomes faster yet. I mean, the beauty of Carl is he had such incredible coordination. He did this, without having, I mean, just so naturally. I'm sure that, it took him and Tom a while to figure it out, but um, it so that's the start. That's how I started out. I started out with a kick the ball, kick the pit. So,
Okay.
and then from there, we'll go back and we'll do four steps. And, I'll just say, okay, now ba ba ba. Let's get a step, or if I want to, I'll put them on a little 10 centimeter box, step down onto the left, then right left. So let's assume left. Let's assume for all this it's a left foot takeoff. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and in that way, they're learning how to have a little velocity and yet still execute the action. Again, with a shoe weight, an ankle weight, or exogen calf. And this allows them to start to learn and feel. I will take a rubber band, a rubber tubing, wrap it around their foot, and make them step and use the foot, pull through the foot. So what's it feel like when you pull with the foot and not the knee? It's way up in your hip is where it is. So you start to learn how to use your hip flexor to pull that leg through.
Mm.
Now, eventually, the coordination is you get a little bit of both, but you got to take it to where you're sort of way over here on this side of the spectrum, get them to feel the foot, and then you can bring some of the knee back in. But that works quite well. You can, so you go from no resistance to kicking the pad to some resistance so that they're starting to feel it. And you'd be surprised how many people cannot feel where that foot is. They just can't. They keep wanting to lead with the kneecap,
Yeah.
and it's no, lead with the top of your foot. Come off the ground, lead with the top of your foot. This way, if you lead with the top of your foot versus the knee, if you lead with the knee, you'll actually end up with a high heel almost every time. Because if you're leading with the knee, it means you're using the quad and you're getting a relaxed hamstring. So, but if you lead with the foot and you learn how to basically, it's almost isometric in the quad hamstring, then you come through, bam, and you kick the ball or you hit the board.
Isometric seem to have taken a reappearance, shall we say?
Yeah,
What are
yeah,
your thoughts on that?
it's been cyclic. I mean, it was really big in the late 70s and again in the early 90s, and it's almost always followed swimming. Believe it or not, swimming is kind of led isometrics each time.
Hmm.
Um, is there a place for it? Hmm, I don't know. I mean, we're moving at hundreds of degrees per second.
Mhm.
I want to learn how to coordinate that. Certainly don't need to know how to do it slow.
Yeah.
Um, Having said that, you could make a case for early use of isometrics to establish a little bit stronger tendon fascial. I mean, you're stressing that tendon and that fascial junctions. Um, and probably going to get some ligamentous adaptations as well. But I'm talking about pretty young, I'm not living in the States for 12 years now, so I don't know what's happening exactly in PE, but I'm kind of assuming that you guys are getting kids that aren't as coordinated as they once were,
No.
and certainly their bodies are not as adapted to stresses or stressors as they once were,
Right.
which is different than China. In China, they're all adapted to the same thing for the most part. Um, there is um, they do a lot of really low intensity plyometrics throughout their basically 10 to 15, 16-year-old years. Um, and so that's why they get so elastic. They don't get strong, but they get elastic. So they get one side of the equation, they get the velocity side, but they don't get the force side. Then later on, and that's why they're pretty darn good at the junior level, the youth and junior level. You see
Mhm.
some good Chinese athletes, and then they don't get any better. They sort of stay.
Mm.
That's because they continue training in the same way. It used to. That's changed now, but that was the real problem. Um, and I think we have the other problem here is they either get overtrained, no training, or inappropriate training. I'm not even sure. You guys, um, don't know their left from their right. Yeah, Adrian, I can believe that.
Yeah, the
Um,
skipping is non-exist. I mean, the kids today have very little physical coordination whatsoever, you know.
well,
Uh,
it's so when Dr. Hay told me that galloping was the thing, I remember going to the playground. Of course, they probably thought I was some weird old man or weird guy, but I watched the kids play. I'm like,
right,
okay, let me just see here. And it's kindergarten, so I wanted to watch kindergarten recess. And they all come out, and about a third of the kids were galloping, and then the rest of the kids were skipping, and some couldn't do anything.
right.
Um, but so the key here was you have to gallop before you can skip. It's a precursor to skipping,
Oh,
even. So it's a really low level biomotor ability where we think of it as complex. It's really not. And part of this, having some really great conversations with someone who recently passed away, unfortunately, with Ed Elder. Um, and Ed's whole approach to therapy was evolutionary biology, basically. I mean, he was looking at how the body uh, functioned, or how it grew in the womb, and then how it separated as it developed, and then what did that mean, that embryonic those embryonic changes, what did that mean in terms of how the body reacted once it was out in um, our world?
hmm.
And Ed's approach was incredible, and it's too bad we lost him so young. But that I after watching kids on the playground and seeing the different developmental abilities, and noticing that some kids could skip already, but the others, which were stuck in galloping and hadn't learned how to skip. So I kept thinking, and Dr. Hay had said, it looks like sometimes they'll go right from sort of shuffling around right to skipping, and they miss galloping. And when they do that, they miss learning how to jump.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I would say because skipping has been more in the mainstream than I mean, galloping was like a kindergarten, first grade type thing when we used to have those
Yeah,
stick horses and going around
right,
with
right.
that. Andy, you had a question for us?
No, I just had a wisecrack.
Oh,
Randy, you mentioned you've been out of the country too long. I was going to ask you what's this PE you speak of because it's
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
physical education is a dirty word in the United States.
yeah.
Yeah, we
Unfortunately,
probably don't want to go down that path right now. There's a lot of dirty words in the US, which is my rude awakening to coming home. Um, Anybody who's on Facebook knows where I stand there. But uh, um, yeah. So anyhow, and I don't know, Sue, if you remember when before John got kicked out of whatever it was, but John had taken that whole galloping thing and developed, I think, 8 different gallops for the high jump, for training the high jump.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't have any videos of those. I don't know if anybody does. They might.
I
Um,
haven't, yeah, I mean, he's kind of been off the radar, so
yeah, yeah, definitely. I haven't seen him in years now. So,
right.
um, but but the good thing is John did take that and used it to develop those high jumpers.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Adrian, you've got a question for us?
Actually, two-part question. Coach, are you saying going back? You said that most people don't know how to do the penultimate. Is that because, like you were talking before, a lack of kids not knowing how to gallop? They're not doing it. How would you describe it?
Well, Adrian, I'm not positive, but I was making the point about galloping is it is a precursor. Um, and then once you learn how to gallop, it makes it easier to learn it. So the next step in my statement that would be maybe coaches start teaching it, because I don't see people doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even see Tara doing it. And she's probably a 720, 725 jumper with just a little bit of of movement down in her penultimate.
Hmm.
Um, and it's and I'm not sure what like again, we don't have data. I mean, I don't know
See,
what
that's, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, when you asked me to do this, I'm like, gosh, if I had data, I could really talk to you about it. But I've
mhm.
got no data over the last 6 years.
No, unfortunately, that's kind of a whole nother issue that the data that we do have doesn't seem to be shared, and or we don't have it because they've not funded things. So hopefully we're trying to get back on the track and resurface some of these projects. And like you and I talked before, Eric Kennard has got an activity for the jumpers here in another week or two, actually at Kansas State. So
Hmm.
he's tying it in there with their meet and going to be doing some filming and concepts. So maybe we're getting back in the track of getting the data collection.
But
So
who's going to be leading that? Who's the science? Because
you'd have
our
to ask
best
Eric
scientist
because
is
that's,
Bing, you
yeah,
know.
that's Eric's project. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, Eric, get on it. Get with it. Um, good luck.
Yeah,
It's
Uh,
I know they've hired a biomechanist for the horizontal
okay.
jumps. I believe it's a younger individual though, not Bing. So I'm not sure who or what credentials this individual has. So
Yeah.
again,
Any
that would,
experience in the horizontal jumps?
I'm sorry.
Not that that's necessary. I mean, any experience, not that that's absolutely necessary. Sometimes fresh eyes are great,
Yeah, not to
but
my knowledge. But again,
anybody else know who it is? Be great to have a
I can get
conversation
it
with
to you. Yes. Yeah.
him. Okay. Um, yeah, that's going to be a challenge for Eric, and I hope it. I mean, they should be able to identify. You know, this is not real difficult, by the way. This is pretty easy stuff. Um, we we should be able to identify in each one of the top 10 athletes what that problem is or what their problems are. And I'll tell you, there was nothing better, and I hope Eric would do this. We did nothing better than sit there with Dr. Hay and go over those videos
Yep.
with everybody in the room. And you took your shots. I mean, there were some times where it was like, what are you doing? How can you improve? And it wasn't malicious. It was
It was constructive.
exactly what yeah, it was exactly what we're trying to do. We want to make us better. And I am appalled at the lack of science that I'm not able to find,
Hmm.
not just in this, but in general in the United States. Seems to be going to the wayside. But I think we need to do that. So if you're a coach and you've got timing systems, you need to be timing 1 meter to 6 meters, 6 meters to 11 meters. You look at the acceleration onto the board, those last two 5 meter segments. If you don't have that, at least get a 10 meter. If you have only, well, some tools you can only do 10 meters because they can't actually do five. But I still drop back and use the Brower for my jumping stuff, but just because it's relatively inexpensive still. I did try the Australian system, by the way, that's out there. Um, did not work well. Did not work well.
Hmm.
Lost about every other jump. So at the time, so I was not very happy with it. Um, yeah, I saw that video, David, on their new track to measure splits. I don't know if they put it on the runway. I didn't see that part of it in the video where they're showing their new track. Uh, then I mean it's pretty easy. You can even use dartfish and some other things to do angle of takeoff. You can get angle of thigh. Uh, you know, with the Chinese kids, they all have pretty short legs,
Hmm.
really small feet. So I mean they're size 8.5, nines. The men,
Oh.
the men. So they're losing 3 inches plus just 3 inches, about in the end, 3 inches a lot of times, just in the takeoff, just in the ankle alone, just in the ankle raising off the board. So they're already losing, that much of the center of mass, the height of the center of mass. So we really had to work on them getting their thigh higher. So that brought their center of mass up. Ooh, it's getting way too close. You don't need
Yeah,
that.
your camera's got a mind of its own.
It'll be like, wow. Yeah, it does have one. I gotta fix that. And I'm not even quite sure why. So that's what we have to do with them. Shoulder shrugs. I mean, every little bit I can raise that center of mass at takeoff, I'm gonna take it. Everything I can get.
David's
And
asking about the activator belt. Does that help?
well, first things first, sprint mechanics,
Okay.
acceleration mechanics, then into max velocity sprinting. Without a doubt, it helps. Without a doubt, it's as it's been with me since 1995, and I'm glad it's starting to get used, and people are starting to figure it out. And it is another part of those things, like with Exogen, the activator belt, sleds. I mean, all these things, even mini hurdles, they're all compliance hardware pieces. They're all make the body comply to a certain movement pattern, and then that teaches the body. So with the activator belt, it's teaching you how to apply force down if you can't figure it out, and the last, in the last 6 steps, those of you who've heard me do this on here before, I would maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks with Mike and others, I'd sit with my back to the runway and listen to them and listen to the force of the force application as they're coming down the runway. And that last 6 steps, we really you really hear the force. I mean, it should be a very aggressive sound. And if you don't hear that, then they're not, down gets you up.
Right.
Going down gets you up. So if you're coming into the board, you better be going down, because you're going to want to go up, not in the triple jump, but in the long jump. And so I would oftentimes listen. Today, heck, you could just put a microphone there and listen, and you've got so much to change. I mean, I had this question just last week. Someone asked me, now that since I've been working with the NFL guys this year, back and forth to China and the NFL, they said, so what's the difference between when you worked with Christian's dad and what you're doing now? And I said, well, speed hasn't changed for me all that much. The real key is that we've got technology to measure a lot of things and make yourself more accountable.
Right.
And that's the real key over the last, I'm going to say 40 years, is now you're being held accountable. And there's been some new tools, but when you take these guys like Luke McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey, and those guys are good athletes, but all have problems. Well, Bijan didn't really have any problems. It's just a stud. But Christian had a lot of medical issues that we had to overcome, and those are that component of overcoming the medical side is probably the other thing that's changed a little bit for me in that time period. There's been more technology released that helps them, and of course we use it. So
if you had to prioritize the different, like you said, the coaches have become their own scientists, which I agree, that everybody has their own little different timing things, or just even the phone usage. If you're prioritizing the different technologies that are available for, not necessarily the high price stuff, but like a medium range financially, what would you prioritize as far as getting some of these?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, it really is. You got to be able to measure, so you're going to have some kind of timing system.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have to be able to, because that that is the one thing you're going to be able to do something.
And is free lap good, or what are the different levels for coaches
Well,
is available?
there's you can pay $30,000 for some of them,
Yeah,
down to $900 or whatever for the Australian one that didn't work well.
right.
There's a lot on the market. I still kind of move back to Brower for the runway,
Right.
and I use free lap off on the track. Um, and anybody's using free lap, just so you know, I always raise each of the free lap things up on something. So I'll put it about 8 inches up, because that cone shape, sometimes it just they miss it. And you can measure the shape of the cone. Are all of you aware how to measure the shape of the cone your free lap is creating for timing? So
No.
the free lap creates a big circle, an electromagnetic circle around it. And you take a chip, and to make sure you've got it set up right, you just move the chip. It's got to be perpendicular. So if you've got the free lap here, you move the chip into the magnetic field, it'll start beeping red. Now you know where the field extent is, where the ending of the field is.
Mm.
Up, down, around, all three, X, Y, Z. So you can make sure your free lap is going to be in a position to be able to time, so you don't miss times, which
It's important.
a lot happens a lot. Yeah, and that's why I raise it up. The other thing is, you just heard me say perpendicular.
Mhm.
You have to make sure you don't put free lap on the side. You put it right on the umbilicus. That's going to be perpendicular to the electromagnetic field that it creates. So that's that. In terms of analysis these days, I mean, the simple form is just your slow motion on your. So Matt, I use a lot of different things, but a lot of times I'll just use, the bigger cones they have out there today that are really fat on top. They're about this big.
Oh, yeah.
And they're only a foot high. I use those and put a free lap on top of it. And it's relatively inexpensive, and it's stable, and it moves that free lap up. So I really don't have a problem with timing with it anymore. Do know that unless free laps change it, which I don't think they've done yet, but you had a 7-meter limitation. So you can only do 10 meters with a free lap in terms of the jumps. You can't do a 5-meter segment.
Mm.
And that's why you have to go to a laser-based system, and or if you wish, it's not prohibitive, but you can go to a sound. East Germans do it. I had one. I actually left it in China. A sound gun like you use in baseball. Doppler radar gun.
The
You
radar
can use the
gun.
Doppler radar. Yeah, and you can use the Doppler radar pretty effectively. The difference is, with Doppler radar in the jumps, you put it in front of them. You don't put it behind them. Laser, you put behind them. Doppler radar, you put in front. Same thing for the pole vault. You can do it. It actually works really well for the pole vault on the back side of the pit. Set it up, and you can get them coming down the runway. And you can use it in the jump, in the high jump, because you can do it on the curve too. So you can still get it on the curve. And this is what the East Germans were doing back when they were. I think there's still some papers out on when they were measuring their relays. That's how they were doing their relay velocity merging back in the day. They were looking at the velocity of their incoming runner with Doppler and their outgoing acceleration with Doppler, and then they merged them. And that's where, those of you who saw that formula I gave you a long time ago, that's how we created that. So you can Doppler radar is not expensive. The problem is you have to have
the gun type
somebody.
thing?
What's that?
Is it the one that, like you say, baseball players use?
Yeah, there's a couple out there, but yeah, if you go online, you can find them really really fast which one it is. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact name right now, but I can look it up. But you can utilize Doppler radar really well, and it's I think they cost, I don't know, $300 or $400 some, and then more and beyond.
Sure.
Um, you've still got, obviously, if you want to go to OptiJump or some of the other systems that have where you can line the runway,
Mhm.
that works really well because now you're getting stride length and everything all the way down, and you can see more. So these are, and that's those are $1,000 per meter or more now. Um, and we had the first one at the training center back in 2002, I think, wasn't it, Andy? Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it didn't work, if you recall, because that's when they figured out you can't do them outdoors because they weren't heat resistant. And in San Diego and Chula Vista, that track got a little warm, and so we burn them up. We burn up a whole first set got burnt. Crispy
Oh, wow.
critter. Yeah, well, it wasn't our fault. The Italians came over and went, "Oh, I guess better go back and figure out how to insulate this."
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, to be in the track can be 140, 150 degrees, in the desert, or more.
definitely.
Who knows? All
Definitely.
I know is you burn your feet when you go out there if you're barefoot. Um, Now some of the newer, and I have not had a chance to use them because I didn't have a system in China. But those of you that are now able to use view motion, some of the other stuff that's out there, where you can actually track and do everything, and Altus is talking about it, and um, I just forgot his name. I have not had a chance to use it. Some of you may have used it. This can be, you can become your own sports scientist with it if it's accurate enough.
Hmm.
And that may not, accurate enough, but then reliable enough. Even if it's inaccurate, at least you can see change.
Right.
So, if you can see change, then you're going in the right direction, even if it may not be perfect um, for you. Um, and uh, obviously, you mentioned Kaiser earlier, but being able to, in the weight room, to be able to start to monitor your velocity, monitor your power. And the new 400 line that Kaiser has does it all. And, do you need a lot of pieces? No, no, you don't. A rack and a squat, you pretty much can get everything done, and the rest of it you can do with other devices. But being able to, the seated calf is the one unique piece. And we come back to this Achilles question. I don't know, let's say with someone like Kittle, who, just popped it this weekend. I don't know how much George was doing in seated calf work. Um, all I know is that once we started using the seated calf, I had no more Achilles issues. It didn't create more Achilles issues. The biggest problem we had, and those of us that are old enough, I don't think it's a problem, right? Well, it still can be, but our biggest problem with Achilles was heel counters, stiff heel counters back in the day. So if you push off, that heel counter would push right into the Achilles, just like that. So if you're pushing off your foot, it comes in and just hits, well, it's like this, boom, boom, because your foot's plantar flexing here, and it just would hit it. Well, this is the problem Willie had in '88. It's the only reason he didn't make it, because and he ended up popping his Achilles not long after that. But we had Willie healthy, but then those Adidas triple jump shoes then were digging into his Achilles with every step. We didn't know that at the time. Figured it out though, but it was too late.
Yeah.
Once we figured it out, I have been known to cut out heel counters with scissors just to keep them from irritating people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, like you say, the shoes. Is there a particular type of shoe that you'd recommend for long jumpers, or is it based on the individual's foot?
I think it's, individualized. I know that this little girl we had this year, she was in the Nikes 650 or so, put on the Adidas 685. Boom, verticalness. The verticalness you get out of the Adidas seems to be currently greater than what you're getting out of the Nikes.
Hmm.
In terms of the vertical, it's snappier, if I could, only way I could put it. The Nikes, you tend to go over the top of them a little bit, and then you snap that way. The Adidas, you get a little bit more snap vertically here.
Hmm.
And that's what the athletes say. That's what I kind of see when I'm filming. Like, oh, okay. Now some of you others may have not Adrian, you're asking about a calf injury. He did, but I think it was the other one. Don't remember if it was the same leg or not. But Kittle did have a calf injury earlier in the season. I think he was out for 4 games, you know. And for those of you who want to know how, I mean, we were talking about just before everybody came on. So, and Tony would know this because he was around when I was starting to do this. So one of the things that I've done and used for years is microcurrent. Okay. And with Christian, he had this acute Achilles tendonitis. It bothered him every day. I mean, I was afraid he was going to rupture. I mean, that's how worried I was about it. We modified every training session because of it. And when I came back from China, I brought my microcurrent unit back with me. Tony, I still have an old monad unit that I had when I was working with Jack for a little while. And so what I did with him, and this is kind of the way my mind thinks, and I actually showed this same technique to David Graston back in 93, 92 or 93. I took the microcurrent and I attached it to the Graston tool and then and then another pad to Christian. So I'm treating his body with the tool while microcurrent runs through it. So, or if you want, you can use your hand. But what we found was, in his particular case, a tremendous amount of fascial, if you call it bubbling. But I mean, it was just like pop, 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 pop. I mean, it was amazing all around that whole Achilles area. 2 scars that over the years had tightened. And when scars tighten, they can kind of tighten like this. So you can imagine if there's fascia here, it's going this way. And this fascia is being pulled down this way and this way. And I loosened those scars up and boom, no pain. First time in almost 4 years.
Wow.
So, that's something. And of course you go upstream and you're taking care of other things. But the fact is that we got through his pain and he got up. I remember, I'll never forget, he got off the table and he's walking, he goes, I have no pain. And then he looked at me and goes, dude, why didn't we do this before? Like, I didn't have it with me. Sorry, man. But it is that kind of thing that, you don't overlook scars when you start seeing areas of pain that you're sort of like, why is that there? And superficial fascia, as you start to understand fascia more and you start to see how all of that's interacting in the body and how vast it is and how unrelated pieces of the puzzle can be, like in Christian's case, I'm working here and then I went up and worked behind his shoulder, which ended up being extremely tender. But that is attached right on down all the way to that fascia. So when you look at these connections, you start to understand. But you use the same connections when you're starting to teach sprinting and you're starting to drill and you're starting to understand how this moves and functions. And that's why you've heard me say, muscles set up joints to take advantage of elastic power.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you say, getting that cause and effect type of thing, not just treating the effect, but figuring out where it all starts. Now, we haven't really talked about triple at all, and yet it is equally distressful. Do you have any thoughts on that are different from what we've talked about here for long?
Well, so in the triple jump, what I observe is people afraid of speed. They fear the velocity they need to jump far.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so. I mean, you triple jump wrong at speed, don't feel very good.
Yeah.
I made a couple comments the other day to a few people on some video, but the issue I continue to see in the women and the younger men, but then this crosses over to the men, is that the free leg and the hop is not active. You don't push it backwards. You don't, I mean, when you see somebody come off, they come up top and they do that, I mean, it's just wrong in every way it could be wrong. Again, it's out in front and then you straighten but you don't sweep. Your body passes over your foot. Your foot doesn't actively go behind your body. Let your body pass over your foot. I use a cup drill. I think I put this up here once before. So I'll set cups up, little beer cups, one color like a blue, and then the rest of them red. And I'll put that at, let's say for the women, about since we're learning, maybe 4 meters, 4 meters, somewhere in there. And they take off, and I'll say, okay, I want you to put your foot on that blue cup and leave it there, and let your body pass over your foot. Now they start to understand how to let the body do its job and feel the tension develop in the quad. There's the elastic part that brings it forward. Again, Sue, we talked about in the long jump. You lead with the foot. You lead with the top of the foot. You don't lead with the knee into the hop.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much power in that longer leg into the step. So if you lead with this longer leg, that's just a lot more force. And so if you're leading with a leg, like if you lead here, you got almost no force. I mean, it really is very small. It's a position. It's not an action. But if you watch him come down and through and then up into it, there's so much force. It carries you so well into your step. But if you push back, it's going to take your hips out of position, and a whole lot of things go wrong for you. The Chinese had a situation in which they obviously had a very high hop. They were East German Russian taught, the coaches were, in general. Not all of them. There was one guy that was pretty good, Zhou, back in Willie's day, and he understood it. But I think he understood it because he was watching Willie and the other guys not go way high in the air. I mean, when you got Conley and Simpkins and Banks and those guys who are all jumping, Ray, they're all jumping with lower hops. Dr. Hay taught us this. He said, hey, carry your velocity to the jump. Don't go up in the air so high. And, jump dominant. I think there's a point, and I think Jonathan showed this to us too. There's a point where you could jump so far with a jump dominant, then I think you start migrating back to a little bit more hop if you know how to do it. Because that 1843 that Jonathan did in Salamanca, I believe it was Salamanca, that was big, but that was a huge hop. And he and I have talked about it since. And he doesn't even remember how he did it, to be honest. Jonathan's pretty interesting, But David, the answer to that is absolutely. Both of those things, too high and that bucking, because they're trying to push that leg back. So if you just take, cups and you set the cups up, make one, and you have to figure out what that distance needs to be. You can start shorter, but you make them come through, they come off, and this foot goes here, and then their hips pass over. So this never goes behind that blue cup. They leave their foot there and their hips pass. Then they feel that stretch up high in the TFL, the sartorius, and the rectus. Now, once they feel that stretch, if they go too far, they'll rotate the hips. But if they just feel it, they keep the hips neutral, and now they're able to take that low foot, bring that low foot up, and that mass carries them farther in their hop. It's a relatively simple cue, not so easy to do until you start teaching them how to do it. That's why I teach straight leg bounding into right, left. So I go long to short. So I actually teach straight leg, boom, 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 and then until they can feel, and then boom. So now they're going straight through, and it teaches them how to have that power. A lot of times you'll see people do straight leg, and all of a sudden they start lifting their knees. It's gone. It ends, So,
So now go straight leg bounding.
Into right, left. Boom, 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 boom,
right,
boom.
left.
Yeah, but you're in doing that, because you're going straight leg, you teach them to lead with the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Pull. So you're pulling and leading. So you pull down, but you're leading with the foot. And then when they go into their right, left, because they'll just transfer, they'll go in, and then they'll start to lead with the foot and then the knee. And now they're just jumping. Now it's a distance versus frequency based.
Mhm.
You can do both. You can do both of them. Sorry, it's a little confusing. You could do frequency based straight leg, or you can do distance based.
I know
So
talking with Kenny Harrison and Al Joyner and some of them on past calls, they've said that they view the end of the hop as the end of the takeoff.
well, that was that's the Randy special there.
Okay.
That was yeah, that was nine. I don't know what year that was, but we all talked about it in Chula Vista. So it had to be when it first opened, 95, 96, somewhere
Mhm.
right in there. And we all sat there, and Mike and Dick and myself, and Kenny, and a few others, it was like, look, you guys, the approach ends at the hop takeoff. That's where the approach finishes. So that way you understand that you're not trying to jump off the board,
Right.
which
Right.
takes that high hop out of the equation. And that's been a go-to for me for years and years and years. The approach ends there. So that way you learn how to you don't overemphasize the free leg, and you just bring the heel through and you run right off it. So when you start seeing all this stuff, boom, I just want to, you know, unless you're mop head, there's very few people can get away with that. I
Mhm.
mean, even Dom Bin, who is basically built quite a bit like him, um, I got him off of it. And he was gold medalist indoors and then bronze medalist twice. So, um, and I think I have video of him somewhere. He went 1750 from 10 steps. He was almost Al Joyner like. I
Wow.
mean, I think that's farther than Al went from 10 steps. You know, but he learned how to go that way and not that way.
Yeah. Well, and you had mentioned earlier at the very beginning about short approach versus long approach and being able to execute the correct takeoffs and so on. What are your thoughts if we're working with, late high school, mid college age jumpers and trying to help them as far as training? Do we do short approach? Do we do long? Do we mix it? How is that?
Okay, use your short approach, but don't use it to jump far. Don't use it to measure the distance.
Okay.
Use it to create the system. Use it to create the process to jump far. So yeah, use short approach, but see with the Chinese, you're like, how far can I jump from 6 steps? I don't care.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Unless we're having a 6 step jump competition, I really don't care. But what I do care about is how well you're executing
Hmm.
in those 6 steps. And obviously you have to slow things down to start getting people to learn. And repetition is easier at 6 steps than it is at 14.
Right.
And they could learn more. But does anybody not understand the penultimate step and its action, what it is? And I got to see here if I can. I don't think I have. Let me check on something here to see if this came through. Let's see. Did it come through? No, not yet. It didn't.
Yeah. If any of you have any questions here, we're about wrapping up. So
Yeah.
pays
Hey,
more
so
attention
it's
when
it's
been asked
Oba.
questions.
Hey, Oba, how are you?
Hey, I'm well, and it's
Good.
been really informative. This is jumping is not my thing, but I nerd out on some of this stuff regardless. Two things about the tiger paw.
Yeah.
Um, what about potential hamstring injuries, and how do you mitigate teaching someone that properly, uh, so
Well,
that yeah, with that
y-
hamstring problems, and then number two was Um, are there any jumpers that you would recommend who male or and female who do the penultimate, that you would say, look at this person since you were not able to provide video on this particular call? So those two questions about hamstring and
yeah, and
then models.
well, the hamstring problem to start off with. Never get it. Never had a problem. Your legs bent. So, and if they don't push off it, your hamstrings are effectively not going to get in trouble. Um, if somebody's pushing off of that penultimate, you can get a hamstring issue at the far range or just as they touch. But the fact is that it's so quick. It's the quickest step in the whole approach. So, let's say your takeoff might be 0.14, that could be 0.09. It's an impulse step. It's that quick. And there's no time to actually injure it. Um, I think that as you do it more and more, particularly if you start slowly and short and you're looking at it, you probably will get thicker and thicker tendinous ability junctions there that will then give you the ability, sorry, to do this without ever having to think about it. But I've never had a hamstring pull teaching the penultimate step.
Hmm.
As for examples, obviously Carl, Mike, Larry, in the women, Jackie is the best ever at it by far. And if you look at Jackie at the UCLA meet and you watch her in Seoul, and there's one other one, I can't remember which one it was. She just hits it and it's perfect and you can't beat it. I mean, it even starts to show you that even though she may not have been conscious of it, that she was starting to lead with the foot in some of those. Now, Mike would lead with the foot. Carl would lead with the knee a little bit more. And I mean, just if you just took those alone, if you go to the top 10 women all time, you only see Jackie. I think Yakova does a small version of it, but again, her greatest thing was that leg, using the force of that longer lever to carry her out into the pit. Shanna used to do it well. Williams, I believe that. Let me think here. Who won in 2005 and 12 gold medalist?
Tiana?
Tiana. I think Tiana figured it out with Reina. I think if you can find videos of Tiana doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look a little bit. But you can find a lot of men doing it pretty good. But Jackie does it better than most of the men anyways.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. I usually show her.
One quick follow-up, and this one's really short. In terms of queuing in live competitions, for running, we only had like one or two things that because it happens so quickly. You don't want to overload the system. I always tell people you cue the stuff in warm up, and then when you're live action, is one or two, maybe three at the most big things that you focus on so you don't get bogged down. In terms of these types of things, is it a similar approach when people are on the runway that you're only getting them to cue very few things in order for them to stay within that flow state?
Absolutely. Even more important in maybe in the horizontal jumps, but you stay with the big rocks. Are you coming out of the back end well? Are you driving out well? Are you driving out too quick? You always use that plane analogy, which a lot of us use. Planes can't take off fast; they fall back on the ground. You get slowly and get yourself up into position, and then you can take off. The cues I use most are drive out of the back, bigger, better if you wish. Rip the right, in this case, left foot takeoff, and keep the foot low into the board. So I don't. I do see, and we all kind of did this for a while. I did it for a little bit, but yeah, it's really easy to overcue a jumper in the competition.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you listen to Tom talk about the world record stuff, I mean, even he says, I probably never should have told Carl to straighten out, because I probably lost him in competition. It's too much thinking, and they don't have that kind of time to think, And Yeah, so the big rocks in queuing, I queue very little, and I try not to talk to them very long anymore. Of course, which is really easy in Chinese because I just point and look, I can't talk to them anyways. They don't speak English. Um, and I'll go right foot, and I'll get, or I'll do slower out of the back. I mean, it's all this. I feel I've got to watch Marcel more because you basically just mime the whole thing. Um, but yeah, you do keep your queuing to a minimal. I mean, minimalist. There are things you can do after the board, which we haven't really talked about at all. Um, and again, just the same thing we talked about in the triple jump in terms of letting the body pass through. The same thing happens in the jump in the air, like when you're doing hitch kicks. Your body is passing through your legs. You don't force them. You force them from the front, but then when it starts to the back, you don't anymore. You start looking for and feeling that nuance of hip stress, high hip stress. So that tells you that's the end point of your range of motion. Now let's start to change. So there's that. I think the I felt bad too. This happened in Atlanta. Um, no, it wasn't Atlanta. It was somewhere else. But there's two things in the landing I always tell people. Wait for the pit to come to you. Stop reaching for the pit. Don't rotate your upper body to the pit early. Stay back and wait and wait and wait and wait. So let the sand come to you. And if you ever see that picture of not only Kenny and Tiana both in flight online, you can see it. I have it here. Like I said, I was uploading all my videos over to the computer and they didn't finish uploading. You will see their vision, their eyes looking down between their legs. And if you look out there, your legs are going to go down. So you got to and it's just an old gymnastics thing. Keep your head here as long as you can, and then finally you can look forward. But don't look forward and then in because you're just going to drop everything early, premature.
And Brooks shared that with us in the past about putting your head between your knees, basically, or between your legs
Yeah.
at the end. Would that be the same
Thank
type
you.
of concept?
Yeah, I know it's exactly that. If you want me to sort of do this again with a lot of video, I'll have it uploaded because
Yeah.
unfortunately I only had it was all in the iCloud. I don't have it on my computer, so I was just transferring. I've got 24,000 videos I have to transfer,
Do you think
and so it was taking longer than I thought it was going to take.
we do have
Let's
one
see.
question there about focusing. Do you focus on anything third to last step in prep for
I
penultimate?
see that from VJ. Only that it's a bit of a push. If there's a place where there's a little bit of glute work and hip extension, it's in that step. But the key there is you lead with the foot from there. Don't lead with the knee. Lead with the top of the foot, not the bottom of the foot, but lead with the laces. Laces first. And so you don't dorsiflex it. You just flex it a little bit, a little tension there, and that starts bringing the leg through low. And if you watch Jackie, and doggone, I wish it's unfortunate that these videos have not transferred yet, because I have some good videos. If you watch Jackie do this, you'll start to see how you can keep that foot low and get it there fast. And if you watch a lot of the women, particularly if you go back and watch, let's say the NC2A championships, if you see video there, you'll see so many of them have their shin above parallel going to the board.
Yeah.
And and in the case of I call it sliding into the board. So that's you heard me talk about pushing off the penultimate. So when you push off it, if it's not an impulse and you push off it, you slide your body towards the board. And what happens is in doing that with the high knee and the high heel on the other side, you lift the thigh on the takeoff leg. Kiss of death. I mean, you're either going to foul or you're not going to jump very far. Now that's Also, by the way, it's an athletic move when you're too far from the board. You'll automatically do it when you're too far from the board. So in practice, you lay the 2 meter mark down. Women 1.8 to 2.1, men 2 to 2.3. And you get them in the zone. So that's a zone. It's not a specific place, but it's a zone. So if they're in the zone, you know that if you get them there, now you look at what are you doing with this foot and to the board. So now you look, the big rock is get them in the zone first. Make sure they're in the place where they can be successful. If they're outside that zone, with the exception of somebody, old days like Brian Johnson, who was 6'6" or whatever, and fast as hell, probably could have been 2'4".
Mhm.
But, Carl was around 2'1". Mike was 2'2", between 2'1" and 2'2", a little bit over sometimes. Jackie would be somewhere around 203 to 208. Akila, no. So Heike, who was 5'10" and a half and ran 10.79, would be 205, 206. That's meters from the board. So that's from the front of the board, so closest to the pit. You talk about somebody that tall, that fast. Jackie was pretty much the same, who was also quite tall and fast.
Mhm.
So, but your range, if you look at 2.1 to 1.8, if you're in that zone, you're good. Part of this is, of course, you've heard me talk about greater trochanter length. Part
Mhm.
of it is, Akila, to answer that, is your GT length for sure, can be. But if Wanjainana is 0.95, Shiyu Hao is 0.94 GT length. I mean, those are really short legs, folks. That's okay, Obadella. Even if she's 6'2", what's your GT? Because I don't care how tall she is. Gail was 5'5", but her
Right.
GT was like a, bigger person. So if you have your GT, Akila, that can determine maybe that you need to be on the outer edge of that at 2.05 to 2.1.
Mhm.
But just the same, I'll tell you, even at 6'2", a guy at 6'2" going 10.8 meters per second is going to be at 215 to 220. So if you're hitting 10 meters per second on the runway, yeah, you might be at 210.
Well,
If you
on that
do,
note, we're gonna we're gonna wrap it up here for tonight because
yeah, sorry guys.
oh no, this has been great. This has been excellent, and I hope the different jumper coaches would or got some ideas. And again, as you can see, it goes back to science, and hopefully
Yeah,
we can get the powers to be to recognize that and to move on. And again, coaches, if you want more of this, which I know I love it, but if you want more of this, let me know, and maybe we could get Randy on for part two, part three, whatever it might be. So he's shared his email down here for you in the
yeah. If you have some data, Sue, on any of your athletes, and I
Mhm.
can see it, like Akila, if you have data on yourself, I think she might have signed off, or I don't know if she's here. Um, you that would be something to know. Like, Akila, do you have your GT length?
I don't think so. I'm now really specializing in the long jump. I was a hat before, so
Right, right.
I'm
That's
now
cool.
in how to long jump, honestly.
Okay,
Who
okay.
are you
Well,
working with? Are you working with Travis?
Clive.
Okay. So maybe we could work through that and get some data on Tara too. Because she
yeah, yeah, the
Kansas.
both of them.
Yeah.
Um, but
So
those are the things you start with. And I will bring film to the table on the next one because I have it. It's just not in this computer. If I'd done this on my iPad, we could have done it easily, but I couldn't do everything together here. So
fantastic.
uh,
Great. Well, we're glad you're back for sure. Now we pick your brain forever and won't let you get out of the country anymore.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
So,
And if you have any questions, email me. Be more than happy to try to share things with you. And then next time I think I shared some of the mini hurdle and other stuff. So I
mhm.
give away all the Excel spreadsheets I use and stuff. So you're welcome to them. I don't know if anybody's even used any of the ones I gave away before. So
Yeah,
thank you all, and
definitely.
we'll go after it with some video next time.
Sounds great. Well, thanks again, everybody. Good luck this weekend. If you've got meets and so forth, and stay in touch. And actually, next week is Clifford Velto, I'm pretty sure. So we're getting that lined up, and then we'll be back to a distance coach. So I haven't gone just all jump crazy on you guys. So thanks again, and we will see you next week.
All right.